Alrighty, I think most of the people are there. Tom, it's time to formally introduce you. I've seen you at the many shows already. You're always referred as the expert in the AV market. Can you do a quick intro?
I would be happy to do a quick intro. I'm an expert in that I'm really good at people seeing me. So that's a marketing ploy. So yeah, a lot of people get to see me because my marketing is great. But my name is Tom Stimson. My company is the Stimson Group, and I'm a business consultant that works exclusively with companies in the live event production space. I've been in the industry for 40 years. Everybody on this call, I've done your job, probably not as well as you, but I know all about these businesses. And I try and help folks win more of the business that they want, do it better, make more money at it, and most importantly, have fun. Because if you're not having fun in this business, you are doing it wrong.
Cool, cool, cool. Good to hear. So, my name is Roy. I'm the CEO of Redman, and 15 years ago, I also used to work in a event company. Was a sound engineer for a while. Bought a truck, bought the equipment. Before you know it, your hobby turned into profession. So I think I'm one of these guys that you used to coach in how to get a efficient rental business. I took a bit of a side track. So instead of building up my rental business, I realized that my rental management system was the problem, or my software was the problem. And instead of buying something else or searching for the ideal solution, I decided to build it myself. In the last 10 years, I've built out a company of around 120 people. And we try to help AV companies around the world to make the best, also become profitable. So in the end, we have the same goal, but then from a very different direction. So I think, Tom, the theme of this session is that what does it mean to future-proof your planning? And I think the big question is, I want to hear from you. So what does it mean to future-proof your planning? And also, why is it now more important than ever before?
Well, I'll tell you what it means to me. One of my sayings when I was in management is that we make a plan so we can change it. Matter of fact, when I was running show sites, I used to say that. We're going to make a plan, and as soon as we make the plan, something is going to change that's going to affect the plan. But if we haven't made a plan, then we're always starting from scratch. We're always starting from ground zero, which takes more time. It's more confusing. It's harder to communicate. So we always make a plan. Making a plan that is future-proofed is the goal. It's the ideal. It's that thing that we want, okay? But we need it more for our business than we do for events, because events we're good at. I have not worked with a company that wasn't good at events. I've worked with a lot of companies that struggle with planning events, and they struggle with planning for their businesses. And the part of it is that they're unwilling to commit. And we need to commit, and we need to future-proof because of the way the marketplace is changing. Technology is so much easier to apply. Back in my era, it really took engineers to figure out how to set up some of this equipment. What you had to know, Roy, you're too young to not know digital audio consoles. We lived in analog consoles back there. Our consoles were the size of a lorry.
Yeah, this is also how I started out, right?
Okay.
I still feel it in my back some days, getting these on the tilts.
But now we have very reliable technology. It's easier to put jobs together, and that means customers can decide later. And it's not that jobs are coming in last minute. We just simply don't need as much time to plan jobs as we used to. And that's to the customer's benefit and advantage. So there's a lot of changes in the marketplace, but if we're not good at planning, we're not going to be able to take advantage of the good things that are happening in the market.
Right. And so when you say planning to get this right, you don't mean to plan the job, but you mean plan your processes to get the job done, right?
Yes. When I talk about planning and I talk about operational processes, I tell my followers that we are not in the business of doing shows. We are in the business of getting shows done. Anyone can do shows, right? Roy, everybody knows two jobs. There's an audio. Right? There's always somebody standing behind you telling you how to do audio to better, right? We're not in the business of doing shows. We're in the business of getting shows done. We're going to put the right equipment, the right people, do the right drawings, do the right planning so that the execution team can execute a great show. We have got to get better at planning from that standpoint rather than saying, hey, I will go out and just do the show. The same thing applies to business. I'm not just going to run a business. Okay? I'm going to think about my business and the choices I need to intentionally make about what I want to happen and do the things that will help those things happen. So running a business, I use the metaphor of our show site experience and our business experience all the time. They're very similar things. We're bringing a bunch of resources into a room and we're hoping everybody read the paperwork. Now
Right.
we're going to deal with whatever comes our way.
Right. So how we look at when we look at companies, AV companies, we always distinguish three different phases. So we say, okay, so in your company, you're doing you're selling something.
Mm.
Then you plan your show to be on the road. You make sure the right equipment is there, the right suppliers are there, the right people are there. Those people do the execution, and then I think the fourth cycle that you do on a regular basis, you do it twice a year or four times a year,
Mm.
is the analysis cycle where you make sure that your equipment, that you have the right equipment, that you have the right labor pool, that everything
Mm.
is in place. And I think
Right.
when you talk about planning, you mean this analysis cycle to make sure that your business is well prepared for the future and not so much to get your show on the road.
Right. I mean, we always need a feedback loop, right? We do the event. We need to look at the show reports. We need to understand what we did well, what we could do better, what we would do differently next time. We need to look outside our business to see what's changing in the industry, what's changing in technology and customer preferences, what's changing in the talent pool, because that's going to affect those things. The analysis part of it is important, but I don't want to leave out the administration of the business, because there's
Right.
business analysis and then there's the analysis of how you performed in execution. So when I talk about, what is the structure of a business, it's selling, it's planning, it's administration, and we serve the needs of execution. And execution is our internal customer. So if execution is going to go well, we've got to sell, we have to plan, and we have to administrate that business well to do it effectively, do it consistently well.
Right. And so what do you think is the key in the planning process? What is the thing that you should optimize for?
There's different business models, obviously, right? And there's different priorities. So this is an it depends answer. But in general, what we are selling is an outcome with a certain amount of flexibility. I can sell anybody a sound system and I can give them a powered speaker on a stand, and that is a sound system, but that may not meet their needs, right? So we have to make sure that we're meeting their needs and we're providing the flexibility that what if the crowd size is higher? What if there's construction going on in the room next door and we need higher volumes? What we are selling when we do shows is a baseline of equipment and technicians, and there's a hidden roadblock somewhere that has yeses in it. And the question is, how many yeses are in that roadbox? And the best customers, the best margins, the best shows have more yeses. People who don't have a tight budget, people who have very simple technological needs end up with fewer yeses. So planning is making sure that we have the right yeses in that roadbox.
How would you define a yes?
Client says, man, I wish we had one more microphone.
Yes, we have.
Well, we do. We have one right here. Rather than saying, I can get one for you, here's a change order, please sign this, and it's going to take us 4 hours. I didn't send you 4 microphones because you asked for 4 microphones. I sent 6 microphones because that's what I sent.
Right.
Oh,
right.
We're going to have to put a table on the side of the stage. How are they going to hear? Don't worry, I brought extra speakers. They'll be able to hear just fine. That's a yes.
Right. I think the way what you're saying is basically make sure that your audience has nothing to worry about, right? Make sure that you're not going to be in the way of a great show, that there is no process, there is no internal operations for them to take care of. They just want to make sure that the show is right.
Well, first and foremost, the audience should never perceive the technology. If the audience is paying attention to the technology, we're doing something wrong. They should be paying attention to the content. The event planner should never have to worry about technology. So sometimes we send what we think the job will take, not what they think they needed, because that's what getting the show done is all about.
Right.
Now, varying levels of that. Not everybody can afford that many yeses, but there's a certain number of yeses for every type of customer and every level of show. I'm sure Taylor Swift has not heard the word no many times on her tour, except for the concerts that were canceled for, you know, threats of terrorism, right? So that crew went out there with an unlimited number of yeses.
Right. Right. And so to get these yeses on the show, where does it start? So
Well, it starts
what
with, first of all, understanding what was sold. Okay, what is the client asking for? We agreed on a price, and we're working, the planning process should be working with the selling process so that we understand what the customer is looking for, what the salesperson is trying to provide for them. Okay. What is the scope of work of the project? So that's where it starts. One thing that planning cannot do in this process is care about what the job was sold for. If the people who are planning the job are concerned about the price of this or the price of that, they won't be planning. They're going to micromanage their response based on what they think the customer deserves, which is subjective. And that gets in the way of planning. We look at the scope of work. Is this a high finish job? Well, it certainly looks like it. We've got decor. We have these items here. We have all the things that indicate this is high finish. We're going to pack a lot of yeses. Is it a low finish job? Yes, this looks very bare bones. We're going to put in a minimal amount of yeses. And what you'll find over time is that you start putting together packages, systems, and kits in your inventory that already have the yeses built in. And now all I need to do is communicate to the crew what is I'm sending to you, and you now know how many yeses you have available.
right,
That was a lot of
right,
yeses.
right, right. But then so it's easy to say, okay, just bring more stuff, right? But that put even more things in your truck so that you have these yeses. But you have to be mindful of your costs from the start. How how would it work in your process?
Well, I mean, everything's about balance, right? Of course, we're mindful. And again, there are different levels of yeses. There are some times where we send an extra truck and we do whatever it takes to make the client happy. There are other times where we have to define the scope of work and the limitations of it. But even though there are limitations, there are still yeses. Sometimes a yes is as simple as, hey, can we move that 2 meters to the right? Yes. Rather than, no, it's on the drawing this way. I have to do it according to the drawing. Right. So it's also a mindset. So the plan is not what the customer bought. The plan is your response to what the customer needs, and therefore your plan needs to evolve. And we need to expect customer needs to not only change a little bit, but their needs may become more apparent once we get to the job site and understand what's really going on there. The
Right,
venue may throw curveballs at us that force us to adjust the plan for the client's benefit. But it all starts with understanding what the expectation is at the time of sale and not being prejudicial about that expectation, fulfilling it to your best. If that's too much gear on the truck, learn how to package your gear better. Buy products that fit on your truck better. Now, this is one of the differences between, the European businesses and the North American businesses. We have huge trucks, right? We send, 250,000 pounds of equipment to a show and don't think twice about it. You do not have venues that can hold 250,000 pounds of equipment. So how can I put a show into a small van or a lorry? What can I do to make that work? So we may look at, over delivering with a different filter.
Well, I think that might be a reason, but another thing that we see going wrong in the field quite often is that sales is too far away from the process when it's actually being delivered, right? So sales was there in the beginning, and of course they want to get these yeses. It's a job of a salesperson to say, yes, I'm going to get you there. And then they write down the expectation,
Mm.
but somehow in the process it gets like, okay, we have a quote, we have some ideas, but it got turned into a set of equipment, and the persons or the people that are at the job
Mhm.
more or less are not engaged or don't have insights in what the actual promise was, or the people that need to prepare the show don't have any context from what's actually been sold. I think that's one of the problems that we try to deal with already in the early days of Ramban. So previously, a lot of software in Europe was always following this process from, okay, first we have a quote, then you turn that quote into a planning sheet, and then from planning sheet you go into a pull sheet, and at the time it got into the warehouse, that whole information that was there in the sales process, all the choices that have been made there is lost because the only thing they see is a pull sheet and maybe a call sheet. And I think
Right.
the essence is to get that information already at the project.
Yeah. Yeah. So whatever platform you're using for your company that might have a rental management or inventory management element to it, whatever that platform is, it has to be the single source of truth. So why isn't the scope of work and the communications between the salesperson and the customer built into that tool? Why isn't it there for people to see and review as they're building the order? No, there's no reason. One of my least favorite words in our industry is handoff. Sales hands the job off to
Yeah,
operations.
yeah, yeah.
And that is the worst thing ever. Sales never stops being the salesperson and point of contact for the job. I don't care how many project managers you have. Okay, we never get to hand off our responsibility to communicate the project all the way through to execution.
Yeah.
So we have to help them do that. So there's no excuse for not having the information about the job. There's simply bad process.
Right. I think this is also one of the common things we see when scaling a company. That in the beginning it's just the owner and maybe one sales guy, and they are there from the beginning all the way to the end of the job. They do the
Mm.
sales, they have the interaction, they pack the job, and they might even be the sound engineer or the light technician on site as well. So they might know they can prepare for the yeses that they anticipate in the sales process. But the
Yeah.
moment your company grows, you get more roles, you specialize people, and then indeed by nature this handover process starts. How, if you say that's a bad thing, how can you make sure that while growing your company, you don't fall into this trap that these more people, that these more people will become specialized with a handover process in between?
I think we have to pull back a little bit and understand what it is that we're doing. If you start looking at doing a show or getting a show done as a rental process that is built on, that we're pricing up from a rental standpoint, we're adding labor to it or talent to it in order to do the execution, and that the sum of the parts is what creates the show. If we start thinking that way, we're missing the whole point of our business, right? You really have to work backwards from the end result. What is the end result we're looking for? Everybody in the audience could see, everybody in the audience can hear, the client's content was appropriately presented, the presenters felt safe and taken care of.
Right.
Isn't that the scope of work that we're all trying to achieve? Everything else is just scale. The audience is bigger, the audience is smaller. They have more money, they have less money. Okay? At the end of the day, we're always trying to do the same thing. Where we get into trouble, and this goes back, somebody asked a question about, what are some of the main things to really future-proof? If you want to future-proof your planning process, stop customizing. Customization is where we mess up. If we think every show is custom, we're making it much more difficult for the salespeople to figure out how to put the order together correctly because they're always going to be wrong. Custom says they're always going to be wrong because somebody else is going to take it over and say, this is not custom enough. So if we start reducing the amount of customization in our process and what it is that we do for our customers and realize we're not really doing anything custom at all.
Right.
The client's show is customized to them. What we are doing is using standard tools and processes and procedures and people to do the same thing for different people. Very little of what we do is custom. We may do a custom application of standardized equipment, people, and processes.
Right, right. And this might already be contra it might be not in the nature of a salesperson to because the only just say, hey, I'm gonna take care of you. I'm gonna make sure you get the best show and I'm gonna make you feel special, right? That's in the nature of a
Right.
salesperson.
Right.
How do you make sure that the salesperson um, can deliver that message while still on the background make sure that the processes are standardized or that he can make a
Well,
standardized show.
right. Well, let's separate the language. We're going to separate the language, but we're going to use the same language at the same time. The language that we speak to with customers. I want to make sure everybody in the room can hear. I want to make sure that we don't trip over cables. I want to make sure your presenter can see their next slide. I want to do all these things. Here's your scope of work. Okay. And here's what it's going to cost to do that. Now, if the salesperson's having to go and figure out, oh, I need to find a 42-inch downstage monitor. I need to go find this and plug all these items in rather than pick out standardized packages. They're going to waste a lot of time and energy. They're going to make mistakes. And they're going to think every item in there is so critical that they can't negotiate on it. When in fact, it's often very much the same show every time. So how can we give them the language that conveys what the outcome is going to be that also corresponds to systems and kits that are already built into your system, which, oh, by the way, builds your prep sheet with very little extra scrubbing. Because at the end of the day, we're doing the same shows over and over again. It's just on this wall in this room on this day. It's just variations on the same thing. So salespeople need to be better trained at communicating outcomes and selling outcomes. Planning people need to be less concerned about what stuff costs after it was sold because it's too late.
Yeah, and I think it's a good point that you have there because we also see that in our most successful companies that they made the transition from this quotation sheet that's full of line items with all kind of different equipment that they packaged into a sound system 500 people, sound system 750 people, and then on the quote they personalize that single line item, while then they reduce their quoting from, let's say, 250 line items to a few packages where the internal equipment is not even on the quote itself anymore.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I really, how many customers actually care how many cables you're going to send?
It's only if you do
send
rentals,
enough.
right?
It's only if you're in a rental business. So yeah.
Right. Right. Is that does it also affect the speed of quoting, you would say?
Well, of course. Yeah. If in my workshops, and I get a lot of people in my workshops who are not my current clients, and we talk about, how long does it take to do a quote? And I asked this back at the workshop in August. And I've got responses anywhere from, 2 to 3 hours, but it might be over 2 days, to 6 or 8 hours over a week. How long does it take to put a substantive quote together? And the numbers were ridiculous. And I was saying, describe the show for me. Well, this is a standard $50,000 sales meeting with 2 screens and sound and a couple of robotic cameras. Okay, that's a $50,000 show. Why did it take you? I mean, we all know that's everybody's going, yep, $50,000 show. Why did it take you 2 hours to write that quote? Why wasn't it 10 minutes? And I'll say, hey, maybe we should shoot for 20 minutes. But that's 20 line items. And 18 of them loaded in automatically. So why is it taking so long to write a quote? It's because we customize things.
Right. would you be able to, so once your clients are done with your workshop, is that really a common thing that the quotes are done in 30 minutes?
No, it takes a while to get there because, again, well, you have rental mentality that's in the way. They've set up their rental management system as a rental product sheet. They've built some kits. Maybe they've built a few systems, but they've never used it or figured out how to use it as a sales tool. And if you look at it objectively, what salespeople need are packages. Here's if you're a regional company, there's probably 10 venues that are 90% of your work. Of those 10 venues, 5 of them need the exact same sound system every single time. Doesn't matter what you call the meeting. That's the way you put sound in that room. There's only one way to set that room up. So why don't we have packages for the downtown Marriott ballroom and put 2 screens in there? And if we need to take 1 screen out, it's easier to delete something than to add something.
Right.
So the only time you really need to spend is if you have to build a labor schedule in your order in order to go ahead and quote, in which case I'd say, stop, don't do that. Just look at the number of days of people that you need, plug that number in, get the client their proposal, and we'll sort out the details later. It shouldn't take long. I did it for years. I could write a $500,000 quote in 30 minutes.
Right. Right. And then so if you break it down to the essence, and I think it's also a question from the audience. So what does it really mean to be future proof? Would you say that to be able to be future proof, it starts with adjusting your sales process so that it's ready for efficient planning? Is that the key element, or would you think there are more things we can do to be future proof?
Oh, I mean, there's lots of things we can do to be future proof, but obviously it's going to start in the selling process. And if we will make the selling process work better, if we sell something that is planning ready, planning's now going to work better. Planning's job is to manage resources, which means supply chain. You're never going to have enough inventory. You're never going to have enough people on staff. You may have no one on staff that goes out and executes shows. So we're constantly managing a supply chain. Planning's job is to make sure we never run out of supply chain.
Right.
If we never run out of supply chain, we're not as concerned about what sales sells because we always know we can fulfill it and we always know it's going to be profitable. Some jobs may be less profitable than others, but it's all about optimizing your resources.
Right. Because what we hear from when we speak to our customers, the planning process has, let's say, 5 different layers, right? So it starts with the quoting, you have to make sure that your packages are ready to already have all the items in it. But then there is the sub rental, where am I going to get it? But I think even more, it is getting the right freelancers, make sure that you have a good enough label pool, and that you're be able to quickly send out the invites or have an efficient way to communicate with them. Because if we sit next to our freelancers or when we sit next to our group planners, I think they spend around, let's say, 80% of the time actually communicating with their freelancers. Are you available? Something changes. Can you do the job? Do you have experience with this? How's it gonna look like? Do you see a way to make that more efficient?
I did this for years. I mean, my first company when I started in the industry back in the 80s was a staffing company. So I was the labor provider to dozens of AV companies. When I started running an AV company, we figured out very quickly that we needed a high quality pool of freelancers who wanted to work for us, who would rather work for us than most other companies. And to do that, to make sure that they had first crack at those jobs, they would send us their schedules in advance. So if you're trying to manage or recruit in from a labor pool and you don't know their availability before you reach out to them, your system's already broken. So if I'm having to reach out to a key freelancer to see if they're available, rather than being able to say, hey, I see on your calendar that you are available. Here's the job I would like to offer you. Because if we're wasting their time asking them if they're available when they already told us they're not available, and then we call them again 3 days later because we forgot, okay, who's going to want to work for you? So managing a labor pool, a talent pool, is mission critical. We cannot treat them like inventory. But the best freelancers, then the ones that want to work for you, will let you know what their schedule is, what their availability is, and if their availability changes. My freelancers sent us their schedule every Monday because they knew that we crewed jobs on Tuesdays.
Yeah. So we have around 30,000 freelancers who have their calendar connected with our app, so that they sync their free time with our software. So we have an app that gives a mobile notification the moment you request somebody. And we see that while using these technologies, that we can reduce the time spent on communication by 75%. Just by changing the technology.
Right. Yeah, and this is the holy grail. This is what everybody is looking for, is what is that platform that freelancers want to use, that it's worth their time to use. And in North America, we haven't found it yet.
Well, what do you say that then really makes the difference? So from a company perspective, you say, okay, it's very important to have the right freelancers and to have the right talent. And then able to get the right talent, you make sure that you pay them right, of course, but they also want to work with you. And if they want to work with you, you have to make sure that you use technology that they want to work with. What else do you see to make sure that the right freelancer wants to work with you?
Think about what it is that makes a freelancer happy. Do they have good equipment? Do they get what they expected? And do they have support in the field? Yes. Were they paid? Did you pay them on time? Did they get fed? All of those things matter. But at the end of the day, their professional self is being represented by your company. Are you going to make them look good? When I was a freelancer, the companies I refused to work for again were the ones where I called after hours and say, hey, I'm on your show site. I am your operator for this job. I have a piece of equipment that is not working. I need help. And they go, well, I'm sorry, you're just a freelancer. No, I have your client standing in front of me. If you're not giving me support, you're not supporting your client. I don't want to work with you anymore. So we've got to take care of that piece of it and make sure that the customer, that the freelancer can take care of the customer that's in front of them. That's going to make a big difference.
Cool. So I see a question from the audience from Barry. And so he says, what about getting the right information out of the client?
Well, that's, to me, I don't know you, Barry, but that sounds like a very operational question. It's a little judgy. Maybe we got all the information the client had. All right. So let's think about what is the right information. We can do very major projects with very limited information from the client, but we have to fill in the gaps. So when you write a proposal and you write a scope of work, you also have to tell the client the decisions they didn't make and how you're choosing to respond to them. Here's the one that everybody argues about. What time are we loading in? Well, the client hasn't told me yet. But we need to schedule people. Well, the client hasn't told me yet. No, you write in the proposal, we're assuming that this job is setting up at 8 a.m. on Tuesday, and everything is based on that. Now I've got an operational basis. We made a plan so we can change it. And when we finally get hold of the client and they find out, oh, well, the hotel says we can't get in there until noon. Great. I just change it to noon. Rather than running around screaming that I'm not getting the right information out of sales because they're not getting the right information out of the client, we have to fill in the gaps ourselves. This is not hard. So rather than assuming somebody didn't do their job, why don't we all step up and do our job to say, hey, here are the assumptions. Based on this lack of information, here are the assumptions we're going to make, and here's how we're going to move forward.
Right. So here again, make it, standardize it, bring it back to the same time frame every time, and then ask the client, hey, what of this time frame you think it is not doable, or what are we missing, instead of going for them to build the time frame.
You put language in your scope that says this quote is based on the assumption that we are setting up at this time, that your program ends at this time, that the hotel will allow us to do this. right? We put inclusion and exclusions. This is all about, I mean, this is proposal writing 101, but it is also boilerplate. This is standardized. So I don't have to reinvent the wheel every time I write a proposal. I just adapt, adjust, or edit the inclusion and exclusions appropriate for that job.
Right. Right. So what we also see for some of our successful customers that they through Zapier link some kind of a web forms with our software so that the client has one single place to look at. Because what happens a lot of time that you have two account managers working on the same deal and there's communication going back and forth between the account managers. People think that somebody else answered the question and really help for the bigger projects to have one single place of information so the client can see what questions are still open, and every time when they look at your quote are reminded of the things that still need to be answered. I think that we see a lot. So another question that we got from the audience is that it's from an anonymous attendee, and he says that I constantly see pressure to make things simpler for sales. This often involves moving them to a CRM like Salesforce and further away from the operational complex reality and a rental system like Redman. What do you think are the biggest risks with this approach?
Well, okay, let's talk about what it actually takes to do project-based work. All right. Sure, you need a CRM because that's part of the selling process, right? I mean, this is sales and marketing. That's what a CRM is helping you with. You can start a project in there. Many of those CRMs have project management tools that will carry the project pretty far forward. So yes, you need something before Rentman to process information, but there comes a point in time where Rentman becomes the single source of truth. Okay? So the risk is we have two places to put information. So there has to be a point in time where we decide what is the final source of truth. And once we move a job into the planning phase, you know, your rental management software is now going to be the single source of truth. So even if you have a project management software, if you're running Asana or something else over the whole project, I need to be able to look in one place to see what's actually been done. And I've never seen an implementation of Asana or any other type of project management software that, unless it took all the information out of Rentman and put it into a screen in the project management software, that replaced it. So think about what you're using, use the tools the way they were intended. Okay. But always remember, you need a single source of truth.
Yeah, and I think I might have a bit of a different perspective on this. So I think Redman, when I started it 10 years ago, I started it as rental management software, or 12 years ago, it was called rental management software. But quite recently, we made also in our outings a diversification from rental management software to a platform to run your operations or to run your sales. Because I think that in Redman, but also I see it happening in other spaces, that task management or bringing more flexible options for sales is part of the solution nowadays. So our customers that are very successful, they don't start with items. They start indeed with these packages, and they use custom descriptions to tailor different things that are in the software that are under the hood, have multiple items, and then they work with free forms. They work with temporary items that they customize, and then usually what they do is they make a snapshot so that you have like the financial part of a project, and then you can move it gradually into the more operational part without losing the context.
Yeah, this is where we're very much aligned, actually, because the trend that I see happening, and I've been involved in software development for this space for a really long time, is that we have to integrate project management and rental management system. It needs to become a project management system. It doesn't need to become an ERP. It doesn't have to become enterprise software. We don't need CRM, and we don't need accounting built into all of this.
Well, it is crucial. It is crucial that we move a bit further into the flow, because if you take it one step further, the crew that needs to do the execution needs to make sure that everything that is written in the sales process, or that is decided in the planning, is still visible, and they can see the mutation, and they have one app to look at with all the information around it. So it is crucial that you also bring your freelance planning and then the communication to your freelance or to your crew into the same platform.
Yeah, we're saying the same thing. It all needs to be from there. So when my planning team develops the show book that's going to be sent to the crew to say, here is what you're going to do, and here's all the information you need. 90% of it is coming directly out of your project management platform, which has a rental management module to it.
Right, right.
Because rental management, at the end of the day, we're going to scan some inventory out. Great. That's 10% of what we do. We also do subrentals and purchase orders and crew scheduling. There's so many other things that we do. Getting all of that on one platform, I think, is crucial.
Cool. Cool. It's good to see so many questions coming in. I think we have a few minutes left, so please keep them coming. One of the questions we got from the audience is, given the importance of highly skilled crew, what can we do to attract and retain top talent?
Top talent is referral. So you can do a little bit to attract top talent, but top talent will be referred by other top talent. So if you want to work with the best people, ask the best person that you work with to refer somebody else to work for you. And if they won't do it, ask them why and what you need to do differently. Okay. Every good freelancer knows a freelancer who's better than they are. If you want to know whether or not you're talking to a good freelancer, ask them who's better than they are. And if they don't have an answer, they're not that good.
Right. Right. I think that's an excellent tip. And I think this is how it works in other companies, right? If you want more customers, ask your customers to refer you, or
Right.
ask somebody that can also use your business. I think that's an excellent tip. So Tom, before we wrap it up, are there any more practical steps that you can give the audience? I see actually, by the way, another question coming in. What advice would you give a small event company looking to scale its business while maintaining quality and profitability?
Small event, we're going to maintain quality and profitability because that's job one. The best advice I can give to a small business, particularly somebody who's starting out, is figure out who your ideal customer is and be crystal clear on that. Do not chase revenue. Okay. Do not chase shiny objects. Don't look for bigger jobs because you think you'll make money faster. Figure out how your ideal customer is and serve them. That will never take you down the wrong path. Chase quality customers. Every job has gross profit built into it. Doing bigger jobs is not going to get you where you want to go. Better customers will get you where you want to go. That's my advice.
Right. Right. Cool. So we've been talking for 45 minutes. Like I said, are there any last tips or practical tips you want to give to the audience before we wrap it up?
Yeah, I'll give the self-serving tip. Check out my newsletter, visit my website, trstimson.com, subscribe. I send blog posts every week. I've got 2 podcasts every week. I hold workshops. I have people who come from all over the world to my workshops here in the US. So there's a wealth of information that I give away for free. This is what I do. I'm a marketing machine. I've got lots of stuff, lots of content. It will challenge you. It will make you think differently. And I'm real easy to reach out and ask questions. So don't hesitate to reach out to me and ask a question, because I love meeting new people.
Cool. And if people want to follow your podcast, what should they look for?
Oh, it's called the Intentional Success Podcast, and it's on all the major platforms.
Cool. Cool. I have to say, also follow them. Some good tips, some different ways of thinking. So I can recommend them. Cool.
No, look at that face he's making. He doesn't always agree with me, which is exactly what we're looking for.
Yeah, that's also true, right? Especially the episode where I said you should ditch your rental management software was one that I got frowned upon.
Yes, but when you listen to it, you felt better, didn't you?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Okay. And we
okay.
look at it from the same perspective, right? We should look at the projects from the eyes of our customers. They don't care about our equipment; they care about the service that we deliver. And the better you understand your customers, the better you know what they're looking for. The better you can tailor your quotes, and the better your process will.
Right. And I always tell folks, you don't deserve to use the digital tools until you learn how to do it the analog way.
Cool. Thanks, Tom.
All right. Thank you,
Thanks to the
Roy.
audience for asking questions. And then maybe see you another day.
All right. Good job. Thank you for having me.